Good morning, everybody. Mark Gilbert here again with you for another informal conversation around the Science of Mind textbook for our Saturday morning Science of Mind conversations. It's great to be back with you again. I hope you're enjoying this series, and I appreciate you joining live this morning. And for those of you watching the video, happy that you are clicked through and are watching this after the fact. What I'd like to do is, of course, make this a conversation, and one of the things that I'd like to know is if you're watching live, go ahead and in the comment field, wherever you're watching it, drop your name and where you are so I can know where the viewers are. And this is from anybody whenever you're joining, so I may say that a couple of times just to see who all is there. So I'd love to know who's watching and where you're from, and maybe we can get a conversation going regarding anything on Science of Mind that you want to talk about. So having said that, I just want to show that today's topic is really chapter 6 of the Science of Mind textbook. That's going to be the focus for where I'm going to be bringing information from. But I would also say again that you can bring any topic in on the whole idea of Science of Mind. That's something that you want to explore. But the chapter 6 is man's relationship to the spiritual universe. Man's relationship to the spiritual universe. And even starting with that title, I always have to remind folks that Ernest Holmes, the author of Science of Mind and the founder of the philosophy, he wrote in the first half of the 20th century when the tradition was to use the word man for humanity, so it's inclusive. So when he talks about man's relationship to the spiritual universe, he's talking about our humanity, or all of humans, men and women. What is our relationship to the spiritual universe? And so if you're watching live, I would invite you in the comment field to drop a name of where you are, where you're coming from. And I see we've got a couple of folks here. Roy from Fort Morgan, Colorado. Roy, great to have you with us. And let's see, I see Wayne there. Wayne, where are you? We're going to drop another comment in there and let me know where you're coming from. Where in the world are you? And let me put that up there as well. In any case, great to have you along with us today. And it's, like I said, we're going to be looking at this chapter 6, man's relationship to the universe. And one of the questions I'd like to throw out there is the idea that what is a spiritual relationship? When you hear those words, that title that's in there, man's relationship to the spiritual universe, what does that mean for you? When you think of a spiritual universe, what do those words conjure up for you? And think on that for just a second, because we're going to come back to it, because this whole chapter, in a way, is rolling around this whole idea of the spiritual universe, and we have to sort of anchor in our minds, what do they mean by that? And what do I mean by that? And what do you think it is? So that is one of the things that we'll be looking at. And Wayne's asking a question about how we practice oneness, which is where we'll ultimately go with all of these sessions, is all about getting to oneness. So we'll come back to that question. Okay. That said, let us just get into the topic. And I'm going to remind everybody that if you're joining us live, please drop your name and into the chat field and let us know where you are. And beyond that, I'll also encourage you to share your thoughts and ask questions as we go along. And we'll try to bring all those questions into what we are doing and what we're talking about this morning. And anything is fair game in the topic of Science of Mind. If we can roll that conversation in, I do want to do that. So let's see. And I throw out the question: what is a spiritual universe? And let's see. Roy is saying it means like Shazam, superhuman in the universe. Okay, that's an interesting way of looking at it. And you bringing in the superheroes and comic book theme. And in a degree, we all are probably superheroes in some capacity. But again, we're looking at chapter 6 of the Science of Mind textbook. I'm going to start by just reading a couple of quick quotes from the beginning of the chapter. And just to set the tone, because Ernest Holmes starts the chapter by talking about what the spiritual universe is briefly. And in fact, the setup of the whole chapter is a little bit about an intro to the spiritual universe, and then he gets into a topic regarding freedom and bondage. And you might wonder, why is he talking about freedom and bondage? But I may or may not go through order in the chapter. What I want to do is maybe come back to where he talks more deeply about the spiritual universe. And I think that'll help make the conversation on freedom and bondage be a lot better or a lot easier to understand. But here's from the beginning of the chapter. He says, whatever is true of the universe as a whole must also be true of the individual as some part of the whole. Man is evolved from the universe as a self-conscious, thinking center of living spirit, and as such, he must, in his nature and being, reproduce the universe. So we are part of the universe, and we're reproducing the universe within ourselves, but we are not the universe. It's like sometimes people say, oh, in Science of Mind, you teach that everybody's God. Well, we teach that God is in us, as us, but we're not all of God. And in fact, the philosophy of Science of Mind recognizes that this entire universe is a divine universe of spirit or spiritual aspect of nature, and that everything is embedded with spirit, that God or spirit or the infinite intelligence is in and moving through everything and giving everything its very existence. But by nature of that, we're like waves in the ocean. We're not the entire ocean if we could look at the ocean as being all of God. We as individual expressions of God are like the waves that pop up and then retreat into the ocean. And so that is a metaphor that we can look at for thinking of ourselves, is that we contain the characteristics of the divine. All the water that is in the ocean is in us. So all the divine characteristics of God are in us. But we're not the entire ocean. So we are God nature. God nature is embedded in us, and that we have that divine aspect in us. Okay, and that's what he's getting at there. In fact, on the next page, he says, man is made out of and from life. Man is made out of and from life. And so we are made out of the divine. That's what he's getting at again. Now, I want to recognize that on the next page, he starts talking about freedom or bondage. And it's a good conversation that I want us to get into this morning. But instead, I want to jump ahead to some stuff that is later on in the chapter. And he gets over into a whole section starting on page 121, where he's talking about unity. Now, again, if you're watching live, I want you to drop your name and where you're from, if you haven't already done that, in the comments, so we can throw that up and see where you are in the world. And if you've got a question, as the banner is saying, please write your question in the comments, and we'll try to get the questions up on the screen and maybe go off and dialogue on those. And it doesn't have to be about anything in the book that I'm reading from, although that could be helpful. But if you've got some other question about Science of Mind, be sure to bring that in, and we'll see how we can bring that. We had the question earlier about what is oneness, or how do you practice oneness, and we're heading towards that question ultimately as well. So that said, let us in this moment look at some text on page 123, and I want to bring up something, and also bring up our Science of Mind teaching symbol as a part of this. And Linda from Woodland Park, thank you for joining us. Glad to have you with us today. We appreciate you dialing in live this morning to be part of the conversation. Again, Linda, if you've got any kind of questions or comments, be sure to drop them in the chat. I'm on the bottom of page 123 in the Science of Mind textbook for those of you who want to read along, but I'll just read it to you. He says, we observe in creation an atomic intelligence, then a simple intelligence, after which comes a personal consciousness, then a cosmic consciousness. These variations of consciousness are definitely defined and accepted by most investigators. What he's talking about here is that there is consciousness embedded in everything. When he talks about an atomic consciousness, he's saying in the atoms of everything that you experience in the material world in front of you is consciousness. Okay, that's what he means by atomic consciousness. And then after that, it becomes a simple consciousness. And elsewhere, he writes that that's how it shows up in minerals and plants and lower form animals, so that we have this simple consciousness. And then there becomes a personal consciousness, which is what's embedded in humans. He often writes about the fact that humans, in the evolutionary arc upward, that we crossed a threshold and that we have an awareness of our thoughts. And through that, we, through this personal consciousness, become so aware of our thinking that we now are co-creators of the universe with the divine. Consciousness is embedded in everything, but we crossed a threshold and we can think about our thoughts. And so we've moved up an evolutionary arc. And then he says, and then a cosmic consciousness, that it's consciousness at the higher and greater levels of all that is. Says these areas, the variations of consciousness are definitely defined and accepted by most investigators. And as we watch the transition from the atomic to the simple, from the simple to the personal, and the personal to the cosmic, we find that we are merely going up a scale of unity. We're merely going up a scale of unity. And that's a key thing that I want to stress with all of us today, for you to anchor into that, is that we tend to forget that we tend to be so enmeshed in this world of form and stuff and things that are going on in the physical world. We tend to identify with all of that and not identify with the fact that we're greater than that, that we're in the scale of unity that goes upwards beyond us. And it's, all of form gets more complex. And so I want to read another quote, and then we're going to bring up the teaching symbol and anchor in this concept of unity. From this unity of scale that he talks about back on page 123 and 124. He goes on to write that the potential possibility of what we call the highest and the lowest is inherent in everything. So what we think is the highest, what is that? Like, God, spirit, the infinite intelligence, the thing itself, that's at the highest levels. But as we come down this unity of this sliding scale that he talks about, that the possibility of what's in the highest is also in the lowest. So we can look at things, what would be the lowest, minerals, rocks, things of that nature in the physical world are those things that seem to be the quote unquote, the lowest, but embedded in everything is the potential for that highest. And so what we need to be realizing is that everything contains this infinite potential within it. And in fact, if, quantum physics tends to support that by the very nature that they say that everything contains infinite potential, and it's only consciousness that's collapsing things down into what we measure and see and sense. But he goes on to say, they are not different things. They are the same thing functioning at different levels. There are different mental depths and heights from which we may look out upon life. Eventually he writes, we arrive at a consciousness of unity only in such degree as we see that what we are looking for, we are looking with and looking at. What we are looking for, we are looking with and looking at. And what does he mean by that? Well, if we're on a spiritual path, what are we looking for? We're looking for an understanding of how the universe works. We're looking for the divine. We're looking for an understanding of God. We're looking for the spiritual universe. Again, the question to all of you, whether you're watching this live or recording, if you're live, throw a comment in here. What is the spiritual universe to you? What is the spiritual universe to you? Okay. We had that one superhero comment from Shazam of what the spiritual universe is. But what do you think the spiritual universe is when we talk about it? Yeah. And Wayne writes, what a gift to be present. Yeah, it really is. And this whole gift of being in this whole divine flow is a present for all of us. Life is a gift. This experience is a gift. And that's part of shifting our orientation to see that, to recognize that we are divine beings. But I want to anchor in your awareness this sense of this, what we are looking for, we are looking with. What are we looking with? We're looking with our consciousness. We're taking our consciousness and looking for the divine or God or the meaning of life. We're looking out there and with the consciousness that is within us. And what we're seeing is the divine. So we're actually looking at ourselves in a mirror through this whole thing. What we're looking out there and finding is the same thing as what's in us that's looking. And so we're seeking something and then sensing something with the same thing that's in the thing that's out there, which is another way of saying that we have embedded in us all of the potential that is within everything. Now, let's do, let me grab a couple of comments here. Roy says it used to be heaven and hell, but now you learned better. Yeah, and heaven and hell, of course, as we teach in Science of Mind, are simply states of mind. That when we can shift our focus and see the spiritual universe and see the good divine goodness that's in all of life, and live from that standpoint, that we are living from a state of heaven consciousness. But when we look at the world and see fear and separation and doubt and all the things that are negative, that's what we're living, that we're experiencing our own hell. So these are not places we go to after we transition out of these physical forms, according to Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mind philosophy. But heaven and hell are simply states of mind here, because we have the potential for heaven now, and we have the potential for hell now as we move up this sliding scale. And as Wayne says, love always wins. And it's true. Love does always guide where we're going. The more we can use the power of love, the more that we can use the power of the law that's embedded in everything to create the world. And what we mean by law, that's a good segue. I want to look at something that is familiar to all of you who are students of Science of Mind. I'm going to take a swig of coffee. This is an informal Saturday morning conversation, and I can sense that I need more coffee in the moment. But again, if you have been in the philosophy at all, you've probably encountered this. If you've got a Science of Mind book, you see a version of this in the back of the book several times. And very simply, what Science of Mind tries to summarize with this potential symbol is that the circle represents the universe of form and non-form. The physical matter that's in front of us, but we also recognize there is a world and a universe beyond the world of form, the world of stuff, the world of physical matter, and that's also embedded in that circle. And although we draw it as a circle, that circle really represents everything, everywhere, all at once, like that movie. It's everywhere, and it's going in all directions, and it's inside everything, and it's outside of things, and it's the nature of the entire universe. And in fact, it's the nature of the entire multiverse, is that there is a divine flow throughout everything, and there's a unity in everything. It's like the universe is a giant hologram, and that every part of the universe is embedded in one part of every aspect of the universe. And so our teaching symbol, just by the nature of the circle, would be better represented as a sphere going in every direction and to infinity, and to going to every dimension to infinity. So if we can imagine every dimension and every direction, so that's in a sphere, then that's what that circle represents. But then embedded in that then says everything everywhere is the divine or God. And that the God has three characteristics, or spirit has three aspects to it. And since we are potential in spirit, all aspects of the nature of spirit are embedded within us as well. And the symbol simply says within that they divide the entirety of everything into three characteristics. All of these characteristics are embedded and manifest and in potential in everything as well. So it's not different. It's not three different parts of the universe. It's characteristics that are embedded in everything everywhere. And the first level is spirit. Spirit's embedded in everything. It's also intelligence. It's consciousness. It's conscious awareness. It's when we know that we know. It's the embedding of a new thought. All of that is embedded in the entire universe, that whole conscious awareness of spirit, or conscious cause at the top level. Everything in the universe has soul, or the action that acts upon our thoughts. It also uses the word law, like Wayne used a moment ago, that everything has law within it, and that law is the active force that acts upon our thoughts. And the bottom form is the world of effect. That's the body, or the manifest universe, or what we call the physical universe. But everything, everywhere, has within it, if you could hold the universe in your hands right in front of you, it would contain within that is conscious awareness, the law and subconscious awareness, and the body of form, all of it. And Holmes likes to write that and many others have spoken this way, Emerson and others, that mind or consciousness or spirit is matter in liquid form, and that the world of form is spirit in solid form. And so this experience of the world we're having is the experience of God anchored into form that comes and goes into form and out of form, and into form and out of form. But what I want you to see is that within everything are all of these characteristics of conscious awareness, the subconscious medium that maintains a memory of all the thoughts and of ourselves and the collective consciousness of all humans, and then also the aspects of acts upon our thoughts that creates the form. So the teaching symbol actually shows that the flow of thoughts from our consciousness through this medium brings the form. So we're actually locking liquid spirit into solid form for the through our thoughts. But what is our everyday thinking on that? What is our everyday thinking? Our everyday thinking is that stuff out here is permanent and physical, and this is the reality. So then the question becomes, and I'll throw this question to all of you: what is really real? What is really real? Is it only physical matter? And there's a lot of people who believe that. A scientific, materialistic viewpoint that some people take it to the nth degree say only physical matter is real. But what we teach is that there is this interplay between physical matter and mind, or spirit, or consciousness. And so, what is the spiritual universe? Well, everything is. All of this entire unity of all of things that have within it the potential, where consciousness appears in its atomic state, up through its simple state, into its personal state, and up to its cosmic state, that all those levels of consciousness are part of the one spiritual universe, the spiritual universe. So everything that we are floating around in, which is for our day-to-day experience, let's lock it into what we experience every day. We experience this form. I'm holding this coffee cup up. I'm tapping on it. I'm drinking the liquid within here. I'm experiencing the body that I am living in. All of these thoughts are recognizing that I have this world of form around me, but of also having the thoughts. And those thoughts are transcending this world of form. They're coming through the conscious awareness that I have. And and by the very nature that I'm having thoughts every day, I am experiencing the world of the non-physical. I am experiencing a higher life than this life. They're all the same, but they're just in different degrees. And then I know that above my thoughts, there is something greater and grander. There is some spiritual aspect or interplay or interconnectedness of the universe. And within that is, an awareness of some great universe that expands beyond me. So the more people who are on the spiritual path are really trying to get more in tune of moving from the identification with the physical body into their mental thoughts, and their mental thoughts connecting with the spiritual aspect that transcends the physical body. So Holmes, when he writes about the unity, he's really talking about the fact that this consciousness is embedded in everything, and we all have the potential to move up the scale into that. There's other people who have taught this as well. I dropped a note on there about my website and blogs and videos. I'd encourage you to check them out if you like the presentation that I'm doing here. More content and similar kind of content is available there. But one of the things that I've done recently is talk about a book from early 20th century called The Kabbalion, written by another New Thought writer, William Walker Atkinson. It's usually published under the name Three Initiates because he wrote a lot of books under pseudonyms. And I'm not going to go into great detail about that book, but if you're interested you can go to my blog or my YouTube videos and find out about the Kabbalion. But one thing that he stressed in the same book, using very similar concepts, was the idea that we live on this sliding scale of between the world of the relative, which is this physical world, and the world of the absolute, which is the world of spirit. And it's the same thing Holmes was writing about in the quote that I was giving you a moment ago, is that we live simultaneously in this sliding scale between the physical world and the spiritual world. And in between is the mental world and the emotional worlds and aspects of our nature. And it's simply a matter of every day we float between these worlds through what I was describing a moment ago. Am I focused on physical matter, or am I focused on my thoughts? I'm moving from the physical world up to the mental world. Okay. And if I'm focusing on God or in meditation or have experiences of oneness, I'm floating higher into the world and tasting the world of spirit, which we know is there. And so the nature of every day, we can float between these. And this gets us back to what's my relationship? What is my relationship with the spiritual universe? If the spiritual universe is this entire body of the everything everywhere all at once on all multidimensional levels, that has consciousness that moves through a unity or arc upward from simple consciousness to cosmic consciousness, and that I live on a sliding scale in my everyday awareness between physical world, mental world, spiritual world, then what is my relationship with that? It's how I see and how I tend to interact with this world. That is the aspect of our relationship to this divine. Okay, so if you're watching live, be sure to throw your name and your location into the comment field, so we'll know where you are, and I'll throw it up on the screen. And also, if you've got a question that you'd like to bring into the dialogue, be sure to throw that into the question as well. Roy's asking another question: what is Christ and Antichrist? Interesting question. I'll give you my briefest take on that, and with the subject to just further conversation if we want. But when we speak of Christ in the science of mind, what we're talking about is that conscious awareness of what's embedded in us. When we speak of the fact that everything has within it the potential, that the conscious awareness that we experience in our personal consciousness, and that we start recognizing that we have the power to create our own reality through the conscious choice of our thoughts, we're tapping into an awareness that we have something from beyond us that is in us. And so to the degree that we become more and more aware of the co-creative power of our consciousness, and we become aware of the divine unity of all that is, we're becoming aware of what we call the Christ consciousness. And that's what the teacher Jesus taught so many years ago, was about this Christ consciousness, which is why we frequently use that word. So it's an awareness of the oneness of the consciousness of all, and the power and ability that we have within it to use that to create our lives. And it's the awareness of the vastness of the unity that we have through that. What would be the antithesis of that? The Antichrist. Now, it's also taught in many traditions as these are people. Here's Christ, here's Antichrist. There's some like a demon person who's going to be the Antichrist and come down and ruin the planet. But in my way of thinking, the Antichrist is really a potential that's within all of us to forget the Christ nature that we have. Whenever we're not thinking or knowing or recognizing the unity of the world and the ability that we have to be co-creators of this universe, then we are experiencing the Antichrist in our own consciousness. Okay. However, I want to come back and hit on a point, because I've been trying to dwell for a lot of this on, let's see. We got Diego here from Greeley. Hey, Diego, good to see you. Glad you're here with us today. Thanks for joining us. And Diego is, of course, one of our producers here on New Thought Media Network, and happy that he's checking in as well. Again, anybody watching live, be sure to drop your name and where you're from in the comment field. And if you've got a question or a comment about the presentation or anything about Science of Mind, then I would invite you to drop that in the comments. And I'm now going to throw a banner up there to tell you that if you want to ask a question and you're watching via the recording, here's my email address, and I'll let that run up there for a few minutes. So those of you who are watching live, throw the comment in now. Those of you who may be watching on the recording later on, be sure and drop me an email. If you got any question about Science of Mind, I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible with some sort of answer, or pointing you where you might find the answer to that. And also invite you to check out my YouTube page and blog. That said, Holmes in this chapter stresses a whole concept around freedom and bondage. freedom and bondage. I jumped over it, went to read you those quotes about unity and to go through the science of mind symbol because I thought it was important that we consider the fact that everything is one. Everything has the potential for us to move up the arc or sliding scale in our vibrations to higher levels, that there is spirit through mind, through down to body, and that within the form that we experience every day, we focus our attention on this form. And to the degree that we do that, to the forgetfulness of spiritual nature that's also embedded in us, we can overly believe that the world in front of us is the only real world there is. So that, my friends, when we focus on that and the world in front of us gives us negative stuff, then what do we end up thinking? We end up thinking that the world out there is creating my world. And we're giving our power to the external world and the events that we're experiencing out there. And that's what Holmes means by bondage. By bondage. And let's look at a quote that maybe will help get this in here. He says, "We must know definitely and consistently that the universe is for us and not against us." I'm reading on the bottom of page 109. But someone will say, hey, the universe is not for us. Look at the evil, the limitation, lack, physical pain, and anguish of the human race. We shall have to learn that evil is neither person, place, nor thing itself, but it's an experience which we're allowed to have because of our divine individuality. Until through negative experiences, we learn to use the law affirmatively. He goes on to write on page 110, the meaning of freedom implies the possibility of suffering because if we're free, we're only free by the virtue of the possibility of choosing more than one course of action as an experience. If man takes his images of thought only from his previous experiences, then he continues in the bondage which all these previous experiences create. And he goes on to say, I love this line. He says, the more the world arms for war, the more certain that there will be war. And he uses other examples. But the key point here, and it gets back to that aspect of that unity of the universe and what's really real. If we think that the world out there, this world of form, which is feeding back to us in our day-to-day experiences, is the only reality, and that it's driving our experiences, and those experiences are negative, then we are in bondage. We're in bondage to the world. It's because we have the freedom to choose that. We can see and choose to see that our life is driven by external events, or we have the freedom, and freedom and bondage, and this is an esoteric concept, but they're ultimately the same thing in Holmes' words. They're a choice that we are making into how we see the world. And the more we can shift our awareness up into the divine, if we move out of the world of form into the world of mind and into the world of spirit, on that unity, that sliding scale, that potential that we were talking about a moment ago, the more we can shift our attention upward towards the Christ consciousness, the unity of the universe, the more that we can recognize that it's our thoughts that have creative power that create the universe that we're experiencing. The more we can shift and do that, the more we taste the freedom that is truly ours. We have the freedom to choose to see our life as being driven by external events. Your car breaks down, your bank account is low. You can go down a spiral and say, look at all the crappy things that are going on in my life and focus on those things. And you can stay in that. You have freedom to stay there in bondage. Or you can shift your focus and recognize your creative power, all the gifts and goodness that you've got in life, and turn your attention to the goodness and the ability that you have to create more goodness in this life. And that gives you the freedom to create a greater life. So we can choose bondage or we can choose freedom. And bondage is just one aspect of freedom when we think we don't have freedom. That's what Holmes is getting at in this entire chapter. And so what I invite you to think about is, how can I shift my attention and focus to be higher? How can we move into that state of towards oneness, towards the recognition that everything is one. That was the question that we had earlier in the beginning of the show. But how can we actually practice oneness? Well, one of the things that we can do is to turn away from the conditions that are in front of us. We could acknowledge that the things that are going on in our physical lives are real as form. We're not saying they're not real. I'll be very clear about that. Science of Mind teaches that they're real as form, as things that have been manifested already, but they have an ability to be shifted because what, again, matter, physical matter and things in front of us are spirit locked into a temporary state of form, but they can meld back into spirit, kind of like Einstein's equation that everything is matter can turn back into energy, and then energy turns into matter. That's how we see the universe, is that the universe is spiritual, a spiritual universe that moves into form and out of form. And so first thing we can do is to turn away from those conditions, acknowledge they're there, take care of them, have healthy boundaries, do whatever you need to do to deal with those life events, but don't dwell on them. And this is the thing where it really takes practice and it takes support. It's the techniques that are taught in Science of Mind by using the power of affirmations to affirm and see the good. It's turning our attention away from what's in front of us that's negative and turning upward and making a different choice. Is your relationship going to be, and that's the ultimate question in this whole chapter, is your relationship going to be one that's focused on what's happening to you in your physical life, or is it one that's going to enjoy the good things of the physical life, acknowledge the others, and then turn your attention upward to see the potential that exists in everything and start using the potential within your conscious thoughts and your conscious actions to start creating a better world and creating a better world. And that, my friends, is your relationship with the spiritual universe. You use the power, the freedom of your thinking to shift upward towards seeing unity, towards recognizing the Christ consciousness within you, towards seeing the goodness that exists in all of life. Okay. So, any questions about any of this? I think it's a great. The thing that Holmes is getting at is it really, we have the first thing that we need to do is always to recognize we have unity. A couple of other tips that we can throw in there, just, I mentioned, and being a little repetitive here, but I want to drill it in, is that when we're immersed in the things that are in front of us that are negative, to acknowledge them, deal with them, but turn away from them, not see them as giving the power, that they're not a precedent for how your life has to be, that you can transcend your life into something different. And that's by moving up this arc, this spiral, this sliding scale that I was talking about, where you can shift out of the world of what's happening right in front of you, up into the awareness of your thoughts and your ability to create, and up into a spiritual nature where there is a pattern for goodness in your life that you can tap into and create into your life. And then use your life every day to shift more and more up the sliding scale. In fact, if imagining that sliding scale, or imagining a map in your mind where we're living on this energetic dimensional level where we can move between vibrational states, if imagining a sliding scale like that helps you, and it helps me to think in terms of, okay, what's going on in my life might in this moment not be the best that I want to experience, but I've got an ability to shift upward. It's not to get myself immersed into a pity pot and stay complaining and sharing with others all how horrible my life is, but to shift every day to a little more up that arc of life, to recognizing the goodness of life. So shifting away from the negative you're seeing to seeing the good. The more you can focus on the good in your life, what's good in your life? Ask that question. Have a practice every day where you are having gratitude for the goodness. Most folks keep a gratitude journal, or every night before they go to bed, they'll sit down and write out what happened that was great today. The more you're doing that, what you're actually training yourself to do is to shift up this focus. It's shifting your mental thoughts up into the awareness that you can direct your life. The fact that you start seeing the things in front of you that are already good, you recognize there is a universe that supports you and wants good for you. So where's the good in your life right now? Where is the good in your life? And turn your focus to that. Another practice you can do is so much every day. We get up every day And what do? We immediately wake up and we go through our day of stuff. So we spend, in a 24-hour day, if we're spending 8 hours sleeping, we're spending the other 16 hours immersed in the world. And so it seems like much of the day is devoted to the world of stuff and form and the material universe. We must carve some time out of our days to focus on the spiritual and mental universes. We must take time to pause and shift upwards. There's several ways you can do this. One is every morning, get up and meditate. Meditate and where your intention is to taste the divine, to recognize you're more than matter, that you're more than form, you're more than stuff. Recognize that you have thoughts, and when you hear that chatter in your mind, feel thankful that the thoughts are reminding you that you have a mental aspect that's higher than the world of form, that you have the ability to consciously think and to choose your thoughts. Be blessed by that. Focus on the goodness that's in that. Focus on tasting the divine and the spiritual aspect of the world and the unity of all of life that is above you. Move your consciousness out of the world of form, which so much controls our day-to-day focus. Spend some time every day focusing on your thoughts and the spiritual aspect. Take a pause every morning, every time, every day. If you work somewhere, built in some pauses where you just for 60 seconds, go within. Just feel the spirit flowing through you. Feel thoughts and energy flowing through you. Re-anchor yourself into the divine, and then go about your day, anchored in knowing that you're more than the stuff that's happening around you. And the more you can do that, the more you can create that awareness and to create a higher and greater relationship with the spiritual universe. So in summary, and if anybody's got a final comment or question that's watching live, be sure to do that. If you're watching on the recording, my email address has been going by. Hopefully you've captured that, and you can send me an email at any time, and I will try to respond to you as quickly as possible. So again, I'd encourage you to visit my blogs and YouTube videos. They're on website www.consciousbridge.com. From there, you can link to the YouTube page where my YouTube videos are. I also want to thank everybody for the comments and questions today, and be sure to join everybody each Saturday for all of our speakers as they dive deeper and embody the science of mind more fully. So be sure to be with us next week as we wind down. I encourage you also, if you support the work of the New Thought Media Network, to be sure to go to the appropriate pages on their website, which is scrolling across the screen right now, and hit the donate button. It's donations from people like you and your support that keeps the New Thought Media Network going. And there's a lot of technical costs that are supported through the work that you do. And yes, and your time is just about up. So again, join us next Saturday for another presentation and discussion regarding science of mind and all that we're doing. I appreciate all of you who have come on and spoken live. And let me just, in summary, in the final minute here, sum up this entire chapter 6. We as human beings are in a spiritual universe. The spiritual universe is everything, everywhere, all at once in multi-dimensions. It contains 3 characteristics embedded in everything, everywhere. There is consciousness, there is an action or field that acts upon our consciousness, and there is our experience of the physical world. The physical nature, the action that acts upon thoughts, and the thoughts themselves are in everything. If you could hold an aspect of the universe in your hand, that within that hand would be all of the aspects of that. Wherever you see something, a grain of sand contains all aspects of the universe within it. That Science of Mind teaching symbol that we showed, it has everything in every drop, everywhere, contains all 3 aspects that are in that chart. We also recognize that there is a field of unity, as Holmes wrote about, and we read the quotes that were in this chapter, where we can move through consciousness up from atomic consciousness embedded in everything up to a cosmic consciousness of the divine. That the world of form and moving up to the world of spirit is simply a scale where things are in different vibratory states that we are moving up to. That we live in the world of form each day, and we need to find ways to shift our attention and focus up to the world of spirit, bridging it with the world of our thoughts and the world of the mental world. The more that we can shift our practices up, we taste oneness, we taste the Christ consciousness, we taste the aspects of our ability to create the world that we want. So what is your relationship? As we end today, what is your relationship with this spiritual universe? If you're focused only on the world of form and seeing yourself as victims of the stuff that's going on in the world around you and physical stuff, you need to shift your relationship upwards to that higher vibratory rate, upwards up to your mental world and up into the spiritual world. See your divine nature, see the truth and the ability, what you have to create the world that you want. And you can practice that every day by shifting your attention and focus away from the physical world, seeing the good that's in the physical world and using that and your thoughts to bridge to the spiritual world. Reorient your thinking, see the good in life, and know that goodness is coming to you. Practice affirmations, meditations, spiritual mind treatment, and other techniques taught. Anything that can develop that relationship with the spiritual universe. The more your relationship is in yourself is in relationship with the spirit and the allness of life, the oneness of life over the stuff that we're experiencing so much every day. The more you identify at that higher level, the more that stuff is going to change. And you're going to create a life of goodness, love, joy, peace, prosperity, and all things wonderful. I hope this has been beneficial. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on next Sunday with another speaker who will be going through other aspects of the Science of Mind textbook with you. Thanks for watching.